And I see the heading is closing the circularity gap. But I mean, the gap is actually so large that I don't think we have even started to, move a little bit to close the circularity gap. Especially if you talk to Catherine Barth from the Nordic Circular Hotspot, which just was here yesterday, and we were talking to 30 leaders around Norway. Where do we even start? How do we know what's really happening? And then we're moving into the topic here of standardization. Which is also, of course, on top of our list, because we need to know where we are, to know where we're going, and we need standards. We need to know, and get people to have an understanding, a common understanding of what are we really talking about, and we need standards to reach towards, and benchmarking and all these things. So I'm very happy. We have a new speaker now going to talk about the importance and the potential and impact of standardization. We have here Jacob Mehus, who is the CEO of Standard Norge, with us, and welcome. And we're looking forward to have your perspective on this from your side.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm going to bring up my presentation in just a couple of seconds. Like now you see my presentation, right?
Yep.
Right, thank you. Anyways, good morning, and thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'll be speaking a little bit about the topic, which is closing the circularity gap and the impact of standardization. Although I think actually I'm going to reverse a little bit and first talk about the impact of standardization and how, in general, standards have an impact on the society we live in. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we, as a standardization organization, work with circularity and standards related to that. And I can say that it is not always so easy to communicate and to explain, perhaps, why standards are important and why they're actually very important when we want to make changes and we want to improve or adjust the way we organize our societies. And I think I can also safely say that each of us, all of us, interact without being aware of it every day with hundreds, potentially thousands of standards. And we simply don't think about it. And we don't really relate to it. And I think that the main reason why we don't think about standards and we don't relate to standards so often is because very often standards represent something that just works. It's just there. And as a part of our communication effort around standardization, we have developed a series of pictures which we label "Imagine the World Without." And I think that all of us would focus quite a bit if we didn't have all these thousands of standards that make our modern society work most of the time. A lot of the processes, a lot of the services that we relate to, they simply just work. And I think that if we did risk having a roof tile that looked something like this, that clearly didn't fit into the spot where it's supposed to be located, it would be enormously annoying. And I think that every day we relate to, we at least here in Norway, we think that clean water we just assume that we will have access to clean water in the tap every morning. Road safety, a lot of us relate to that, and we assume that road safety is handled, communication on all kinds of levels, banking services, all these things that they're just there. They just work, they just exist. And I think that behind all these products, services, processes, there are standards. I guarantee you there are standards. And I think that perhaps this is why standardization is such a powerful tool, and why standardization, it's important to be aware of standardization as a mechanism. And you could say that all in all, standards build trust and they help us change our societies. Standards and standardization make an enormous contribution when it comes to sustainability, and they're effective tools supporting the sustainability development goals, the SDGs, and I'll say a couple of words about that a little bit later. Standards support innovation. Some people sometimes think that standards is almost like the opposite of innovation, but I think that quite the contrary. I think that standards are very often the basis of new development and innovation, and I also think that if we didn't have the standards, we would very often have to start over every single time. We would have to reinvent the wheel, and like a previous speaker mentioned, that is not the objective. The objective is to develop based on what we already know, and standards represent very well the common understanding of what we already know. Standards also help when it comes to effectiveness of our society. It helps us save time, resources, and it provides predictability, which of course in a modern complex society is enormously important. And last but not least, it's important also to be aware of that standards is not developed by the standardization organizations themselves. It is developed by the participants, the stakeholders, all the people, all the organizations that participate directly in standardization. And standardization is an open democratic process, and absolutely everyone can contribute and participate. But it's easy to make these claims, and I think that it's also equally important to have data to support that with. And these are a few of the results from a big survey that we did a few years ago. This is the response from more than 1,100 Nordic companies on the importance of standards, and why this is important to these companies, these organizations. And you can see from the infographics that almost 70% of the companies said that standards for them are very important because it helps them access new markets. And new markets can be regionally, it can be nationally, it can be on the European level, and it can be on a global level. 85% of the company or the organizations said that standards help them build trust and confidence in their products and services. At that point, 50% of the replies that we got said that standards and standardization help them reduce their environmental impact. And I think that if we redid this survey now, because this was back in 2018, and I think that if we redid this survey now, this percentage would have increased substantially. And then almost 85% said that standards and standardization help their organizations comply with the regulations, either at the national level or at the certainly here in Europe at the European level. And almost 90% of the 1,100 organizations that helped us with their responses to this survey consider standardization an essential part of their future plans. And they also emphasize the importance of standards and standardization as a way of following the technical development. On many levels, standardization is recognized as an important tool. This is Guterres at COP26 asking for clear standards to measure and analyze net zero commitments. And of course, standards and standardization is exactly that, a very effective tool to agree on how to measure and how to analyze, and in this case, the net zero commitments. And I think that the challenge from Guterres has been well received by the global standardization organization, and there's a lot of activity related to exactly this. This is from Norway, our current Minister of Trade and Industry, Jan Christian Vestre, who says that the circular economy is an important part of the solution to the climate crisis. And of course, standards are tools for a more circular society. So at the global level, at the national level here in Europe, and also certainly at the European level, standardization is recognized as an important mechanism, an important tool to change and improve the society, and in this case, closing the circularity gap. When it comes to the effort related to circular economy, there is a work underway in ISO, the global standardization organization. ISO has members from 165 countries across the world. And this is a technical committee. TC is just short for technical committee, and then it has a running number. So this technical committee has the running number 323. And it deals with exactly circular economy. And it has members currently from 87 countries that are actively involved, Norway being one of them. And as you can see from the map on your screen, that Europe is very well represented in this specific committee. It operates under the leadership of France. And I think it is also reasonable we know that the number of participating countries in this committee is increasing day by day. And what's interesting, I think, is that underneath every one of these so-called technical committees, there's a whole range of activities. So if you are interested in the specifics on this technical work, you can go to the ISO website and look up this technical committee, and you will get a very easy and accessible overview of the ongoing work in this committee. And if any of you have interest in participating in this work, because like I said, standardization is open for everyone to participate. If you are interested in participating in this work, you can connect with your national standardization body. If you're from Norway, I would recommend you to contact Standard Norway. And in every country around the world, there is a national standardization body that can help you connect with the work of ISO TC 323 Circular Economy. The work of this technical committee is currently in 5 working groups. One group working on terminology, the second group working on practical approaches, the third one on measuring and assessing circularity, the fourth one working on the practical use of circular economy, and the fifth one working on product circularity data sheets. And then there's some supporting work with another technical committee on secondary materials. So this is currently the way this work has been organized. And in these 5 working groups, all of these 5 working groups have specific standardization activities and specific standards under development. And it is important to recognize that once these standards are published, because they will be, and what has been or will be published from these working groups is then agreed upon by the overall community of 165 countries and can be implemented across the world in any country as a valid ISO standard. ISO, of course, does a lot of work related to sustainability, climate change, circular economy, and so on. And these are just 3 examples. There's one example with a new international standard for measuring the performance of cities going smart. A second example is a standard building resilient cities with new international standard. And the third example on this slide is what's called a London Declaration and ISO's commitment to the climate agenda. And basically what this commitment, this London Declaration says is that ISO will consider climate and climate change in absolutely all standardization activities that they have ongoing. In every committee, that where climate and climate change has any relevance, this shall be included, this will be included in the standard. And just to, like I said, I would quickly mention towards the end a little bit about the sustainable or SDGs, and this is the result from a study made by the UN together with ISO, where they did an inventory of the stock of standards of ISO and then linked them to the SDGs. And as you can see from this slide, there are hundreds and thousands of standards supporting absolutely all of the 17 SDGs. And of course, the general idea here is that if we improve these standards and if we continuously keep on evolving and developing these standards, supporting the SDGs, this will have potentially an enormous impact on the across the world in every country where ISO standards are used in when it comes to products, processes, services, and so on. My last slide, just to let you know a tiny little bit about Standards Norway. We are the national standardization body here in Norway. We're the member of CEN and ISO, CEN being the European Standardization Organization, ISO being the global, one of the global, and CEN being one of the European. There are two others. We are a private independent member organization and a non-profit organization. We're approximately 125 employees, and we develop standards in all sectors. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for this interesting presentation. And we share 100% the need of this and as a tool. And I think, I mean, the best way to see it, as I personally see it, is that it's aiming focus towards a specific area, right? And we're building capacity around this area. That's what we are all about here, what we've been building up in also the U4C and the United City, to try to raise the capacities and understanding of what is sustainable. I have a challenge here. I saw on the different standards for ISO, you have 2 standards for the SDG 17 goal. Maybe that's really our problem. We need more partners. So maybe it's something we can work on together with the lab.
We would very much like a Norwegian initiative on some of these SDGs. So we would love to work with you on that, of course.
Yeah, looking forward to work with your group and your team to do much more here in Norway, but also, you know, have an effect and an impact on what's happening outside of Norway. So we're looking forward to be in touch with you and your group very soon. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you.
We're going to move over now to one of our partners here in the lab also, which is BDO, which has been with us from the beginning.